All right, let's get started. All right, welcome everybody to our webinar today, celebrating the winners of the inaugural NINDS Rigor Champions Prize. I'm Devin Crawford, and I am representing the NINDS Office of Research Quality, which organized the prize. And my colleagues Mariah Hoy and Shai Silverberg are also here. You might see them pop on screen to help out at times today. So after my short introduction, you'll be hearing 5 short presentations by the individual or team winners, followed by a chance to ask them questions. And by way of housekeeping, today's meeting is being recorded, so you will be able to reference this later if you'd like. And you can enable closed captioning under More at the top of your screen and then under Language and Speech if you would like that. So for those of you who are new to the term rigor champions, these are enthusiastic individuals who want to drive improvements in rigorous research practices and transparent reporting. And such champions are needed to combat the systemic pressures on scientists to demonstrate high impact and high productivity, often to the point of undermining careful, thorough, thoughtful work. And changing such an entrenched system requires a cultural change and many people working toward the same goal, but fortunately anybody can be a rigor champion, and their efforts, large or small, really can contribute to changing local and sometimes larger culture. And there are many individuals out there at different levels of seniority, different types of organizations, think universities, funders, publishers, scientific societies, but often they feel isolated and under-resourced. And we wanted to change that by showing these champions that we value their efforts and by helping them find one another. And therefore, we developed this prize in order to recognize individuals or small teams who have promoted or enhanced research rigor and transparency and have contributed to changing the culture of science. Specifically, we wanted to be able to identify these champions, reward their efforts to improve rigor, as well as to increase awareness around what they're doing. And we did choose to run this prize as a challenge mechanism, and challenges are actually very different from normal NIH funding. Typical grants are awarded for proposals for future activities. They're actually awarded to institutions and not individuals, and the people running them are mostly limited to people who are eligible to be principal investigators on grants. They're reviewed by panels of scientists, and this can take many months, and funds are, of course, restricted to those scientific activities. Challenges, on the other hand, are awarded for activities that have already occurred. They are awarded directly to those individuals or teams. It's actually open to anyone in the general public to apply. They can be reviewed more quickly and flexibly than grants, and the monetary awards are unrestricted. So these are basically cash prizes. So by doing this as a challenge, we had the flexibility to reward individuals who would not normally apply for grant funding, like technical staff, early trainees, or people who are not in an active lab currently. And so the participants wrote short essays. They submitted them in December 2023, after which they were judged and selected. And we announced the winners about a year ago, and they received a cash prize. But since then, we wanted to find a way to publicly recognize them, hence today's webinar. And the winners are listed here, and you will notice that people could participate as individuals or as part of a team. And so there's a mix of individual and team winners. And they, of course, will be telling you today more specifically about what they did, but you'll notice that each winner contributed to a very different type of activity. So there isn't just one way to be a rigor champion. For example, reforming promotion and tenure policies, or developing courses, organizing conferences and events, creating a group within a scientific society, and even providing a variety of educational and infrastructure opportunities. We also recognized a few honorable mentions for activities like venues to tell stories about scientific quote-unquote failures, journal clubs to discuss rigor and reproducibility issues, and prizes for publishing null studies. And so we congratulate all of our winners and our honorable mentions, and hope, of course, that their work inspires others who want to improve scientific culture around rigor. But we would also like to advertise today that there is a new iteration of the prize with a deadline coming up soon. So this Rigor Champions Prize is specifically for those who are early in their careers. We know that their efforts may sometimes be underappreciated and less visible than those of later career individuals, but we of course believe that this early enthusiasm really should be fostered. And again, it will involve writing short essays, but this time there are up to 2 $10,000, 3 $5,000, and 6 $2,500 cash awards, so up to 11 cash prizes. We also just announced that the deadline has been extended to June 6th. So please, please encourage the early career rigor champions in your life to apply. And if you want to learn more about this or the NINDS Office of Research Quality, you can of course check out our website or join our listserv at the links here. And Mariah will be following up after today's webinar with important links shared today. And with that, I will hand it over to our current champions to hear more about their prize-winning efforts. So we will start today with Dr. Michael Doherty, Chair of the Department of Psychology at the University of Maryland. And while we are getting him set up, I will let the audience know that we might be able to take quick burning questions after individual talks, but most of the discussion will happen during the Q&A after all the speakers have finished. And you can ask your questions via the Q&A function in Teams. And so Mike, please take it away.
Mike, can you see your slides okay?
I can see them perfect.
Great.
So thank you very much for running this award. I just want to say that this is a a fantastic initiative that I think NIH is rolling out, and I feel grateful to be recognized amongst this group. And I'm actually stoked and really excited to hear the other speakers talk today, because I feel like all of us have our little piece that we can do, and there's so many pieces that we all need to do to really make the scientific enterprise run at full speed and do so in a way that is going to support good quality science. So my particular project was on aligning incentives, and in my department, we undertook an initiative to essentially reform our tenure and promotion, but also hiring procedures and annual review procedures and a variety of other things to align what we reward with our institutional and disciplinary values, right? And so one of the things we really wanted to do was to support people in their endeavor to do really good, high quality, open and transparent science that was going to be reproducible. Next slide. So in supporting the goal of having a robust and rigorous science, we felt that, or I felt that incentives are really a key point, right? Well, people are going to do what is in the best interest of themselves, right? And so this is where the incentives come in, right? So the way we reward scientists for the scholarship that they do, and what we put into our policies is really the first signal, and maybe the strongest signal, to our scientists about what they should be doing to maximize their value to an institution. And the problem here, of course, is summarized by Goodhart's law, which is, when we set up a index or target and use that as our measure of goodness, people are going to game that measure. And once they start gaming it, it no longer serves as the index that we thought it was going to serve in the first place. And so what we really felt that we had to do was to set up the incentive structure such that the process of gaming was a pro-social behavior, or it supported pro-social behaviors that was in furtherance of our desire to have high quality, rigorous research. Next slide. So what did we do? Starting at about 2017, this was a long iterative process. Starting about 2017, we underwent a multi-year effort to overhaul our entire evaluative system. We reimagined what those incentives are. Like, what do we really care about as a discipline? What do we care about as a science? And then we changed the way we wrote our job ads. We changed the way we did our annual and merit review. We changed our promotion and tenure. And I developed some internal funding mechanisms. And then most recently, we developed a faculty and student award system to all really support behaviors that if gamed, would lead to high quality research, right? So things that people could do that would ensure that their research was robust, was open, transparent, and reproducible. And so we built these across all of our assessment time points, with the idea that we really need to have consistency across all evaluation points and make that consistent so that people, when they're working towards the next goal that's in front of them, that it's also going to serve the other goals further down the line in their careers. Next page. Some highlights. In keeping with the Declaration on Research Assessment, we expunged reputation-based metrics from our evaluative system. So we've gotten rid of things like citations and impact factors and awards. As department chair, I have certain levers that I can pull in this respect. And so when I write tenure letters, I actually cite literature on why we shouldn't be using these metrics. so that this signals up to our deans and to the people who serve on the college level committees that there is data that says why these particular metrics, impact factors, and so forth are not particularly good. We tried to center all of our evaluative criteria on what we identified as institutional or disciplinary values. We've reframed our evaluative system to emphasize those aspects of candidates' works that are really under their control. So there are a lot of things that are outside the control of a researcher, such as, what a set of particular reviewers are going to say about a particular publication for a particular journal, right? And so what we really wanted to do was to focus on the substance of the research, not on whether or not it got into a particular journal or not into a particular journal. We wanted to reward behaviors. Now the focus here is on behaviors, not on sort of outcome metrics. We wanted to reward behaviors that are going to support the university's mission, support good research behavior and societal impact. Really sort of thinking about, why are we here in the first place? Well, we're here in the first place to really give back to the community, the scientific community, the broader public, and so forth. And then we changed how people report, right? You can't reward what you don't see. And so we changed the way we set up our CVs so that now people, instead of just having a normal CV where you see a bunch of citations to your publications, each of those citations is now annotated with a set of metrics or indicators that actually map onto our evaluative criteria. Next page. Here are just a small sampling of some of our example of our criteria and the related values. This is under one portion of our tenure and promotion criteria. So something like application of basic science to addressing real world problems or societal needs. This relates to the value of community, involvement in community engaged research that is aimed at addressing societal issues that leads to publication of public policy. This relates to the publicness and inclusion part of our mission. Commitment to providing equitable access to scholarly research through open access, development of research tools, code, data, and open sharing of those resources, so openness and transparency, and then things like evidence of adhering to standards of conducting transparent, ethically sound, and reproducible research, linking up with the key criteria or the key values of rigor and integrity. Next page. Some of the things that we've been doing since this award is we developed with some collaborators that you see identified at the top of this page, Greg Tannenbaum, Aaron McKiernan, and a few others. We developed a little nifty toolkit for aligning incentives. This was really aimed at people who want to be change makers but don't know where to start. So you can get that on, I think it's PsycArchive. I'm working with that same group, the Open Research Community Accelerator, to continue to run workshops for the Council of Graduate Programs. And anybody else who wants to invite us in to help them sort of rethink how they're doing their incentives, we're happy to talk with people. We just started a workshop series with CogDop related departments on values alignment. And again, just extending an open invitation to anybody who wants us to run a workshop. And you'll see some links here and a little QR code there. We have some repositories set up. Feel free to visit those, download, ignore, whatever. But we have made as much of this material openly available as humanly possible. And then one last page, which is my thank you. I couldn't do it without the people here on this call, without having a community of scholars who care about this stuff, and a very good department with very thoughtful colleagues who also care. So with that, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike. And there were no quick questions, so we will move on to the next presentation so we can have lots of Q&A at the end. So next we will have Dr. Dana Lopato, faculty, and Dr. Nina Exner, research data librarian, on behalf of their team that includes Timothy York, and they are from Virginia Commonwealth University.
Thank you so much. I know on Zoom where the preview is. Are the slides looking okay? Okay, yes. Perfect. Thank you so much. It is so exciting to be here. When I heard this event was happening, I was so excited. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about the work that Dr. Nina Exner, Tim York, and myself have been doing at VCU. And I'm going to focus primarily on what we've been doing through the VCU Data Science Lab. So a bit about us. We are a research data librarian, an assistant professor, and a professor at VCU. And while we've been doing things individually and collectively, to promote rigor at VCU. I'm going to mostly focus on what we've collectively done as part of the data science lab. And sort of the mission statement of the DSL is that we're going to support rigorous and transparent and reproducible research at the university through the promotion and development of methods and tools and training programs consistent with helping produce the robust research findings and really maximizing the value of research. And for our efforts, what that has primarily looked like are educational initiatives and training initiatives. So for example, we now have a course that has grown to be 3 credits. It's called Data Science 1. It is a graduate level course, and it gives hands-on training for how to use open source programs like R to conduct your research, and we also talk about how to share your materials. And we're really excited that that's now a required course for some graduate degree programs in the School of Medicine. And we've been very fortunate to have students from several different groups at VCU, not just the School of Medicine. We've also engaged in training workshops, consultations, and that can be one-on-one, that can be with a lab or a department, and doing our best to embed ourselves and be active in the responsible conduct of research courses by giving lectures on things like data management, p-hacking, pre-registration, and things like that, with the goal of promoting behavior change and ultimately better science. One of the things that I'm particularly excited about and proud of is that we have an ongoing collection of archive material from our Data Science 1 class. We love the Open Science Framework, have a close relationship with the Center for Open Science, which is just down the road from VCU. So we love OSF and use it to archive our course materials from Data Science 1 as it's evolved over the years. And as you can imagine, class material from several years, it's not as linear as we'd like. So we have partnered with the VCU Affordable Course Content Awards to create an open educational resource that will guide folks through that content. And we're going to use both Pressbooks and our Markdown to promote accessibility, because we realized that some students were having issues with the R Markdown version on their tablets. So very grateful to VCU Libraries for being so instrumental there. We also have engaged in community building. So it started with reproducibility, and I think that was was that pre-COVID? I think it was. It's like 6 years. Time has flown. We've also hosted seminars with guest speakers, and one of the things that's been the most pleasant surprise for me was setting up a Slack workspace where you could promote what was going on and hear about what's going on. VCU is a institute with a lot of spread out buildings, and so having a channel or a workspace where you can promote what's going on, ask questions, hey, is anyone using this, or what should I do here, has just been phenomenal. And if I had to give a theme for our work, I would say it's always better together. We've been incredibly fortunate to work as a group. It's especially partnering with VCU Libraries. They are absolute wizards at organization and promotion. And again, they have initiatives like the Affordable Course Content Awards that just intersect brilliantly with trying to promote rigor through education. So how others might get involved just generally and get things started, I would say, you know, from personal experience, we started with small steps. And, you know, whether that's a journal club or requesting that your department hold one seminar a year dedicated to improving rigor, or even setting up a Slack workspace, you know, those are free. And, you know, it won't start with everyone at once, but it can iteratively grow. And if you start small and you build slowly, you're going to be able to see what's sustainable and hopefully be able to gain momentum as people get excited about what you're doing. They see how useful it is. And the hope, the dream, the goal is to find collaborators who will share the load, who will promote activities, and just enrich what you are doing by sharing their perspectives. I mean, I come from initially a botany background, and sometimes I'll have ideas and Dr. Nina Exner will share hers, and I'm like, wow, I never thought of doing that. And it's phenomenal. So highly, highly love and recommend teamwork when it's possible. And if you have the bandwidth and the buy-in, and you can target something like graduate degree programs or training grants, or so for example, with the graduate degree programs, we've floated the idea of asking about rigor behaviors during their annual evaluation to prompt discussions with their advisors. Maybe you can get a mentoring or a continuing education requirement for faculty. There's all sorts of little places where you could start. And if nothing else, you can participate and join others. So for example, the VCU reproducibility group is always happy to host folks. If someone wanted to share, remix, adapt open educational resources, I mean, I would just be so excited. So if that's something of interest to folks, please reach out. I would love to do that. And with that, I want to say thank you so much, both to the organizers of this event and to everyone who has been in the space trying to promote rigor, and of course, my teammates without whom this would not have been possible.
Thank you very much, Dana. That was great. And it's also good to give a plug for libraries, because a lot of people don't think about the important work that libraries can be doing, especially in the rigor space. And sort of going along with that theme, our next speaker is actually Dr. Melissa Rethlifson, and she is Executive Director of the Health Sciences Library and Informatics Center at the University of New Mexico. So if she would like to go next.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for having me here today. I'm hoping that you are seeing my slides. Is that correct? Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. This has really already been a great event, and it's just so wonderful to hear from my colleagues who have been working in this space. And I'm truly grateful for this entire community and for NINDS for doing so much to support rigor and transparency in research. So thank you for having me. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about research reproducibility, the conference series, as evidence from my slide here, but just a little bit of context first. I mean, I think the biggest thing to know about me is that I am in fact a librarian. I am specifically a health sciences librarian, and libraries, as you probably know, are the hubs for campuses, for education, for research, and all sorts of academic and academic health sciences libraries are truly deeply integrated across their respective campuses. So we're kind of this great central location. We tend to work really closely with all of the different subject disciplines across universities. And we're also becoming really engaged in not only curriculum, but teaching research kinds of skills. Me personally, I came into this space around rigor and reproducibility specifically because I was interested in the reproducibility of systematic reviews, and that's how I kind of get started down this whole path. So what was this? This basically was an award for 3 research reproducibility conferences that we put on. Reproducibility here being the broad sense of reproducibility, with transparency and openness and rigor all being really important to what we were talking about. These were taken place at 2 different host institutions, and it really was a way to try and engage our communities, as well as, of course, to bring in lots of wonderful speakers, lots of terrific panelists, and also to teach skills through workshops and courses. Over the course of the 3, and I'm going to talk about each of them individually in a moment, we had over 1,200 attendees, either in person or online. But really, the overarching goals for all 3 of the conferences were fourfold. we really wanted to build awareness, and specifically around concerns, issues, challenges with rigor, transparency, and reproducibility. And this, it was just really important to kind of let our whole campuses, our whole communities know that this was an issue that maybe they should be thinking about. But more importantly, we wanted to talk about potential solutions for the challenges and issues and concerns that were coming up. But we also wanted to take a step back and really try and build individuals' skills and their knowledge to be able to support rigor and reproducibility in their own workflows. And I think lastly, but maybe perhaps most importantly, we really wanted to have these conferences be a way to create community across the attendees. And we did this really by making sure that, though we had a bit of a biomedical focus, I would say, because health sciences librarian, we really wanted to try and make these as transdisciplinary as we possibly could and bring in people from all sorts of fields, all sorts of disciplines to talk about issues that are frankly similar across those. So the first conference was hosted at the University of Utah in 2016. We had a lot of terrific speakers and panelists. We had a very robust poster session with submitted posters. And the theme for this first conference was really, how can institutions actually support rigor and reproducibility? What can we do as institutional services, as supports, as policymakers? How can we actually change things to better support rigor and reproducibility? It was a really fun conference. It was kind of themed around John Ioannidis' article, How to Make More Published Research True, which is why it has a nice hashtag, Make Research True. And it was really designed to get people thinking and talking. And I think my favorite outcome of this conference, first of all, was that we actually had people from every single school and college at the University of Utah attend, with one exception, which was architecture. But next time we would get them for sure. And then I think my other favorite outcome for this was actually that we had a panel of journal editors, and we had a journal editor in the audience who then changed the author guidelines based on the conversations at this conference. In 2018, we hosted a second conference, again at the University of Utah, but one of the things that we had really learned from our 2016 conference was that people needed more than just a conference, right? So what we decided to do was actually to lead up and build momentum for the conference by creating a speaker series called Grand Rounds, Research Reproducibility, or GRR. We liked our amusing acronyms. And it was really designed to bring people from all over campus together, from all sorts of disciplines, throw them together to talk about issues that they were concerned about. In addition, we at the Health Sciences Library ended up partnering with the Department of Philosophy, which was a completely new partnership for us, to host a 2-credit course right before the conference, and the culminating day of that course actually was the conference, to talk about not only kind of like the philosophical underpinnings of why you want research that's, you know, rigorous, but also to provide real skill building for individuals. So our theme for this conference was really that skill building piece. How can individuals improve their own skills? Then in 2020, we had our third and final conference in this series. It was originally supposed to take place on March 17th, 2020. So I think you probably all remember what March 2020 was like. So it actually did get transitioned to a virtual conference that was hosted later that year, which was kind of nice because it ended up opening it up even more of a broad audience than we had. So we actually had a very international audience and set of participants for that conference. Again, we had great speakers. We had Brian Nosek actually giving the keynote for that one. We had lots of wonderful panelists talking about all sorts of issues, and we were really focusing on education. How can we actually educate our students, our postdocs, our faculty, our experienced PIs on how to do rigorous and reproducible research. And this, I think I was most happy with the fact that it brought together so many different disciplines. So economics, linguistics, neuroscience, statistics, psychology, everything that you can possibly imagine. And in fact, one of our economics panelists got together with one of our linguistics panelists later to actually jointly teach a class. So again, just another really positive outcome. So how can others get involved? I would really encourage you to engage with your librarian colleagues because we can help bring together people from different disciplines and generally are awesome, as Dr. Nina Exner there is helping to indicate. And in fact, she and Dana actually presented at Reproducibility 2020, for which we were very grateful. But I also think it's a lot about getting out of your own discipline and partnering with other disciplines. These kinds of topics around rigor and reproducibility, yes, there are some really discipline-specific things, but overall, it's a topic that can be widely approached from lots of different views, and you can really learn a lot from being by colleagues who are coming from completely different viewpoints disciplinarily. Also, I would say that one of the things that really did help a lot was to build that momentum by having regular seminar series. And this is something that we've kind of continued at some of the other institutions that I have been at, but it really can gather a lot of community around these topics and really create spaces where people can talk. Though research reproducibility is ceased as a conference series at this point, I think there's a lot of opportunity for continuing to have workshops, very small local conferences, again, to bring together people across disciplines, because this is really a cross-disciplinary kind of topic. And I have a whole lot of resources that I hope that people will be able to access through my slides later. I realize the font is very tiny, but really just want to, again, thank NINDS for all of their support and for all of my colleagues who were involved in putting on all of these activities, because it was a huge, huge undertaking. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Melissa. And yes, the recording will be available later, and we can make slides if people want to share slides. So definitely not a problem. And I really love the focus on community and bringing people together, because that's what we really like to see with the Rigor Champions. And so that's a good segue to our next presentation too. We will now have Dr. Kevin Knudsen, Director of the Iowa Institute of Human Genetics Genomics Division at the University of Iowa, on behalf of their team from the Core Rigor and Reproducibility Committee at the Association of Biomolecular Resource Facilities. And the team includes Katya Solturch, Francis Weiss-Garcia, as well as Sheena Mish. So take it away, Kevin.
Okay. Again, thank you so much for doing this Rigor Champion Prize. This means so much to both us and the community. And so on behalf of the other members of the committee, Sheena Mish, Katya Solturch, Francis Weiss-Garcia, and myself, thank you so much. What I'm going to be presenting here is our efforts within the Association of Biomolecular Resource Facilities to promote rigor and reproducibility in our core facilities. And so why did we decide to bring this to the ABRF? As you'll note that why did the ABRF supports a significant portion, or the cores support a significant portion of data generated at research facilities. Estimates range that from 50 to 90% of all big data originates from cores, depending on the campus and the research program supported. So the cores can play a very critical role in achieving efficient use of research funds and broadening access to advanced skills, expertise, technologies. And they're also leaders in the development of these technologies, and they can share their expertise so these advanced technologies can be used to generate data in compliance with rigor and reproducible principles. So our mission has been to enable rigor and reproducibility and transparency to use these advanced technologies in our core facilities. As noted, we're building educational resources, sharing critical best practice guidelines, and providing tools. So the C-Corps was founded in 2016 in response to the NIH notice that came out in 2015. And really, we started embarking on a multi-pronged approach to provide guidance and support to corps as they strive to apply these rigorous and reproducible and transparency principles to their operations. But before we could get an idea of how we could help, we really needed to know where corps were at, get a temperature. So we put out a survey to identify how corps are adopting these NIH guidelines and what are the challenges they're facing. We presented the results of this survey at our 2017 annual meeting, and this also came out in a publication in 2019. And one of the things that just to kind of give you an overview, there were 250 survey respondents, and largely from corps in academic settings in the United States, just to kind of give you an idea of who had responded. And 70% of the respondents indicated that they do not have any documentation at this time addressing rigor and reproducibility for the service that they provide. And 85% had indicated that their institutions have not requested that course. But with that in mind, we also asked them to provide their challenges in being able to deliver rigorous scientific data. And as noted here, they gave us direction on where we need to be focusing in on. As you can see, project experimental design, sample preparation, and processing and data analysis were among the major areas where corps tend to struggle with working with their investigators in performing rigor and reproducible projects. So with this in mind, we began to develop resources that corps can begin to use to help them enable both themselves and their investigators to prepare and analyze the data. In 2020, as it's been noted, it was a very interesting time, but we started going down a different path and also expanding our coverage to adopt the use of RRIDs. And so we began working with the ABRF Core Marketplace led by Nate Herzog and Anita Brandrowski with SciCrunch to promote the use of these RRIDs by corps. And for those of you who are not familiar with the RRID, they are persistent identifiers that can be used to help researchers clearly identify and cite specific research resources they are using in their experiments, especially those that impact the interpretation of the biological meaning of their data. They enable transparency to make it easier for researchers to understand which resources they were used in their study, enhance reproducibility, so you can make sure that you're using the same resources from experiment to experiment, tracking, and this is a searchable number that folks can, when put into your acknowledgments or into your methods, allows you to search and see how the data were generated using what resources. And if you're interested in getting knowing more about RIDs, please go to the Core Marketplace or SciCrunch. Well, after 4 years, we decided to test the waters again and take a temperature and see how corps were doing on bringing rigor and reproducibility into their corps. And we conducted a survey in 2021 and presented it at our annual meeting. This came out in a publication in 2022. We were a little disappointed. Little had changed. We had noticed that the percent of respondents indicating that they're providing documentation addressing rigor and reproducibility in their course really had largely unchanged from 2017 to 2021. Similarly, institutions that were asking for this information has largely been unchanged since 2021. We took this as a challenge. We wanted to see how can we better help our cores promote engagement with their users and be able to provide this data. And as I'll note shortly, we have started providing materials that cores can begin to use. We have examples from North Carolina and Vanderbilt of their core facility rigor and reproducibility statements that other cores can now begin to use as templates to develop these resources. In 2023, we had a session at our annual meeting, and we're entitled Engaging Cores in Scientific Publishing, Strategies on Reviewing Manuscript and Authorship. This included journal editors, and this was a very eye-opening talk in which we got the journal feedback on how cores and people that work in cores can contribute to the technical review of the data that is being generated. It's in many cases, the data that's being generated in cores, the investigators may not have the greatest knowledge on the sources of variation or technical control requirements and the metadata that needs to be included to ensure that this proper analysis and interpretation of the data. And so we began working with that and working with them. And the following year, the American Association of Cancer Research journals reached out to us about the possibility of recruiting ABRF members to provide technical review for their journals. And we're in the process of piloting this process. And right now we're going to be focusing on genomics-based research. In addition, we've been developing these resources. This is found on our webpage at the bottom, where we have opportunities, NIH guidance on rigor and reproducibility. At the bottom, here's the best practices. This is the examples from Vanderbilt and North Carolina on their core facilities. And we just put in a tool on rigor, reproducibility, and transparency. This is a searchable tool, a tool where you can plug in and find articles on best practices for given technologies or any given workflows. Best practices will give you a lot of hits if you were to include that in your search term. As we so in 2025, we are continuing with this pilot with the AACR. While not noticed specifically, but I did mention, we have been hosting C-Core sponsored rigor and reproducibility events at all our annual meetings, as well as at many of our regional chapter meetings. And they've been well attended. And I would like to thank Devin Crawford, who was at our recent Rigor and Reproducibility and Transparency Practices for Shared Resources event, which was greatly welcomed. There was a lot of positive feedback from that. So at this point, we've taken a deep dive in identifying these challenges, and we're in the process of putting tools up on our resource page that investigators can use. I would like to acknowledge that this has not been the four of us. This is very much been a team effort. And if you look at the history of the members, I can't thank them all enough for the great contributions they've provided. And then in addition, we got Anita Bandrowski and Nathan Herzog for helping with the RRIDs. And then of course the NIH Office of Research Quality. Thank you for the Rigor Champion Award. And if you want to get involved, we have a third survey out there. please take that survey when we would welcome your feedback. Also, if you have not obtained an RRID or you're using a core, please acknowledge and include that RRID in your acknowledgements. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And last but certainly not least, we have Dr. Mickey Marinelli. She is Associate Professor of Neuroscience at the University of Texas at Austin. Take it away.
Great. Yes. So yes, I'm Mickey Marinelli, and I teach a course called Analytical Skepticism. And this course is taught mostly to people who are already involved in science or who want to become involved. But I've adapted certain aspects to the lay public with the ultimate goal to do and consume good science. So what are issues that could impact good science? There are several, and some more known than others. So first, conceptual errors, what I would call ignorance, perhaps, then careless errors, or maybe dumb mistakes, perhaps. But most of all, there's something that scientists are not immune to, but think they are, and that's irrationality. And so irrationality taints how we judge and do science, so we can no longer do it well. And my overall approach to this course is to cover all of these pitfalls, mostly irrationality and logical and mental traps that we have when attempting to solve unknowns and judging or making discoveries, whatever the research question might be. And to do so, I've created 7 modules that are quite self-explanatory. So the first one teaches seeing and communicating data. Next are cognitive biases and scientific biases, and these are the fallacies and mental traps that could interfere with research. Then I have approaches testing hypotheses, basically experimental design 101, assessing probabilities and how difficult it is to assess them, and that's why we really need statistics to make conclusions. Then statistics themselves, quantifying, analyzing data, and then normalizing data. And I think that what's is novel is not just what I teach, meaning all these mental traps and irrationality, but also the modality in which I teach it. I do some standard things like lectures, homework, and live exchanges in class, which are good practices. But I also do a ton of live e-surveys as we go along, with the idea that students have these aha moments while these happen and realize how all of these factors can really impact how they're doing science. There's plenty of opportunity to problem solve and practice in class, some hands-on activities, projects students get involved with, either to critique scientific papers for conceptual or careless errors, or to design an experiment testing a cognitive bias of their choice. And ultimately, they get a lot of practice, so I can be sure that they don't only learn the material, but they retain the material and do things very well, with the goal of eliminating all of these factors and therefore being able to do good science. So I can't show you all of the course, of course, but I'll show you a few snippets here and there. The first one is just a lecture on seeing and communicating data. So I start off by showing these 2 graphs, and these plot the number of whys. It could be anything, ice cream sales or people visiting the hospitals. Let's imagine it's people visiting the hospitals. And the below is the same graph, but corrected by the population growth across the years. And these graphs show quite different results. Both could be theoretically good, but actually they are not, neither of them, because there's a misleading distance between the tick marks. As you can see here, all the columns are equidistant from each other, but the years are not. So this is just 2 years and this is 10 years. So when we correct for that, we have very different graphs, and here they are. This is the number of Ys, whatever they were, hospital visits, and corrected by population growth. And you can see that you have 4 completely different conclusions with exactly the same data. And so students kind of learn how only these 2 would be correct and these 2 wouldn't. The next thing we go over is the importance of plotting individual data points. Here are hormone levels in the morning and afternoon of an entire population, and you see how it fluctuates across morning and afternoon. And plotting the entire population is something that's commonly done in papers, but plotting the individual subjects is much more meaningful and might show you what's hidden in the entire population. And when we do that, you see that there's a subpopulation with big fluctuations of hormone levels and one that doesn't vary at all. And this is completely hidden if we just plot it as entire data instead of individual subjects. My favorite module is cognitive bias, and we cover a whole lot of things with a basic message that we see what we're looking for and we don't see what we're not looking for. And also we have a blind spot about it. So this is done through different modalities. I'll just show you a few examples. I show students this graph, this image, or this other image and ask them, what do you see in live exchanges? And all the time students will say, I see a little girl with a red coat, or Rihanna with a red outfit. And they say this despite the preponderance of evidence showing that the majority of the situation is people in black and white in both cases. And this happens a lot in the lab as well, where we tend to focus on things that stand out, positive results, and we ignore all the negative data, even though the majority of it might be this situation. We really focus on the positive data, what is different, what stands out. A few other examples of surveys. I give students a little scenario and I tell them, given the information provided, would John be a good friend? And I ask the front of the room and the back of the room and have very different results. So the front of the room said, yes, John would be a good friend. The back of the room says, no, they wouldn't be a good friend. And why is it? I show exactly the same traits about John, but I present them in a different order. In the front of the room, I give them the good traits, bad traits, good traits, and in the back of the room, I do the inverse. So first the bad traits, then the good, and then that. So the primacy and recency effect, we focus mostly on the things we hear first and last, and don't focus on the things in the middle. A similar scenario, if I have students observe a child and list what they're consuming, and this time they all get exactly the same list, and it's different foods, some naturally healthy and some unhealthy. I still get this big variation. And why is that? Because the front of the room sees a child that is labeled as healthy, and the back of the room a child that's labeled unhealthy. So by confirmation bias, they only get to see what they expect to see from that child. And this is a problem in science because oftentimes we judge experiments by control groups or treated groups, and we might not actually see the reality, we just see what we're looking for. In scientific bias, I do cover various things. Here, I'll just do randomizing to make sure that we can create different experimental groups. I start with a subpopulation, and I ask them create 3 experimental groups with a representative sample of the population. So they have to stratify the subjects, and here it's with nuts, so each nut represents like a different subject, you know, elderly people, young people, children, and so forth. And then they create the experimental groups based on that. So this is really an example of a hands-on activity. In assessing probabilities, basically they figure out that we cannot assess probabilities correctly, and therefore we need statistical analyses. I show them a graph of depression scores using this questionnaire across weeks while seeing a therapist. So these are the depression scores. You can see that depression goes away as time progresses, as you see the therapist, and there's a statistical difference between the beginning and week 4, and even a bigger one in week 7. But we should not just focus on statistical significance, but also on biological significance. And if we plot this graph with the entire scale and look at the biological relevance, there really isn't. This is the entire scale. These subjects really do not improve that much. They still remain with mild depression despite having visited the therapist for at week 7. So overall, you know, I cover a lot of information over a short period of time. These different things that are often not really covered, with the idea of doing good science. And I think students appreciate it. Here are just a few comments. This is my preferred one. This class has ruined me. Now I can't look at anything without finding faults. And this class has changed me, and so forth. So hopefully this course helps students do better in science. And how can all you be involved? Well, mostly acknowledge that irrationality and cognitive and scientific bias really does impact the way we do science. And finally, thank you everyone for organizing this. It's been a real honor to be part of this and to have received the award. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I wish I had that course when I was a graduate student. So if everyone can put on their cameras, who was a speaker today and also a team member. We don't have all that much time for questions, but maybe if you're available, we can go a couple minutes over. The first question I think might have been directed at me, talking about, is this award appropriate for general consistent rigor promotion, or is it more for singular discrete efforts? So especially important for the Rigor Prize coming up for early career scientists, as mentioned in the response in the chat, but I would also like to have this for the recording, that it can be either. You just need to be able to tell us and articulate what it was you did, what came out of it, how it was done, things like that. But it can be either long-term broad efforts or more discrete singular efforts, as long as you can tell us about it. And so for anybody can take this question. What are some of the biggest obstacles that you've faced, and how did you get over them? Anybody can jump in. I'm gonna Dana.
Sure. So I think part of our the obstacles we had was we had a lot of enthusiasm, but not a lot of people or money when we started. And so we focused on both what we could do and what we thought would be the most exciting for gaining buy-in. And so we found that by and large, our trainees were the most enthusiastic. And so we could get a lot of trainees to turn out for, say, a seminar or reproducibility or a workshop, and that they would then go back to their mentors and talk about it. And so that really helped. We also, and Dr. Exner, please feel free to pop in. But I think one of the things we talked about is be kind to future you. Like, how does engaging in this this behavior, which is different, and different is always going to take more time, right? It's frustrating. It's not the way I've always done it. But this is really good for future you. Like, this is how it's going to benefit you. And that really helped with buy-in, I feel like.
Excellent. Does somebody else want to jump in with an obstacle that they were able to overcome to get things done?
I would say within the core setting, the obstacle, again, the perfect word, buy-in, getting the cores to jump on board, because honestly they have as I noted, there's not a lot of institutional push to develop rigor and reproducibility practices. And so why would you just do it just because it's the right thing to do if you don't have that incentive? And so getting that buy-in, and honestly, by having these meetings, presenting at our meetings in town halls and other events, cores are starting to get it. And I'm hoping that the next survey will show a better trend in getting engagement from our cores.
Mm-hmm. And Mike, you were jumping in?
Yeah, I was going to say, for me, it was, I think there were two things. One was, I did realize that I actually had to basically provide some background data and education to my faculty so that they knew why we needed to do this, aside from it being just the right thing to do, that it really, good practices are the sort of the underlying reasons. And then the other one is overcoming the perception that the faculty don't have control over their own tenure and promotion criteria. And that was really easy to overcome because it turns out that most administrators they may not be vocal about it. And echoing what Kevin has said, but when you bring this to them, they're open to change, but they just want faculty to lead the charge. And so we had to overcome that perception that there was a barrier.
Yeah.
I have a couple of things for me. It's the lack of awareness that these are true issues in science, and it's very difficult. So that's why the surveys help. But faculty often thinks they don't have the problem. Students think, I think that too myself. So it's just always having to be reminded about it.
That's great. And a lot of the questions are sort of about how do you, go up against people who don't believe in what you're doing, the naysayers, as the question says, and how do you show that this had an impact, that this really was a positive thing? So it's sort of related, but if any of you have any additional thoughts on that.
I can talk a little bit about the impact of Data Science 1. The graduate research course, we were able to show that the time from sort of idea to manuscript was shorter for the graduate students who were engaging in best practices because there were fewer false starts, and they had a clear plan ahead of time, especially those who had pre-registered. They really understood the analyses they were going into, and so they did a better job with setting up controls and things like that. So sometimes it's just in the metrics, productivity metrics.
Right. Anybody else?
I'll just add that, I think my faculty are, they feel like they're getting rewarded for what they're doing and not for, these sort of esoteric markers. And so they feel, I think, relatively good about having the ability to show what sort of value they're bringing to the university, independent of other sorts of expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And I would comment that investigators that have worked successfully with cores and they get publications and grants, it tends to be a nice incentive to continue to go down that route.
Yeah. And sort of to get us closer to closing out, I like this question in the Q&A about how do you help these initiatives continue beyond just the individuals who champion them, and how do you, keep it from becoming too dependent on individual people, as the question says. And if you have any final thoughts you'd like to leave the audience with today, I'd like to hear from each of you of how do you keep going? How do you keep something alive, so to speak? Start with Kevin. Oh, yeah, no. Melissa,
okay,
absolutely.
I'll start with that one if that's okay.
Yeah.
I would say that that's actually a very difficult challenge, and I think that it is really shown, just as I've moved from institution to institution, how efforts have maybe disappeared as long as all of my colleagues have also left those institutions who are working on these issues. But I think that it's just one of those things where you can have an influence at any level and keep going. And maybe I'm not doing the exact same thing that I was when I was at Utah or Florida, but here I'm teaching a journal club class for graduate students. And so kind of keeping the momentum going and doing what you can and not giving up, I think, is a lot of it.
Yeah. And I think it may not look the same, everywhere you go, the same way that there's more than one way to be a rigor champion. So I really like that, sort of be resilient, keep trying. Okay, and other final thoughts, I'll go down. Kevin, you're next on my screen.
I echo Melissa's. You just got to keep going. If you don't, it's bad on you to not participate in this, because this is going to allow you to continue to advance your career. And we would talk with investigators, and this, by adopting these principles, this breeds success in their science. And when they see that, it just continues to grow.
Yeah, that's great. Mickey?
Yeah, I think it's the outcomes and the students, their eyes so enthralled in what they're learning, and then them writing to you back months, years later, thanking you and seeing how their careers have taken off, and that's enough to get going. Yeah, to continue going.
That's great. Dana?
Yeah, I think being open to the fact that maybe each semester will look a little different, because maybe one semester you have the bandwidth to do 2 workshops, and the next semester maybe it's 1 or none. But I really like using platforms like the OSF to capture materials from that, so that when bandwidth does come back, or you have other people who can pick up the baton and run, here's all these materials. They don't have to start from scratch, and they can adapt it, update it, whatever they want. And I think that really lowers the activation energy needed for people to jump in. It's like, oh, I can do this. Yeah, I can do this.
And that's really where communities can help with everybody sharing with each other. Absolutely. And Mike?
Yeah, it's all about culture change, and culture changes slowly. And so, when we get into this, I think all of us can probably say that we're in it for the long haul. And we want to find that next person we can hand it off to, who is going to take our baby and make it better. It's all about, not what we do now, but what we do in the future. And we always know that no matter how good we're doing now, we can always do better. And so that's sort of what I try to preach to, my students and other people. And hopefully it sinks in, and we do have someone that we can hand these activities off to.
Yeah, that's great. And Mariah, would you like to close us out?
Yeah, thank you. Please join me in just, giving a round of applause for all of our presenters. Thank you so much for being the rigor champions that you are. As a reminder, we're going to send all of the registered attendees an email with all of the resources from the slides that were shared, as well as the recording once it's up and posted on YouTube. Please sign up for our NINDS Office of Research Quality newsletter, which goes out about monthly. That's in that pinned comment in the Q&A. And thank you all for attending.
Thank you.